to discuss about the mm, hormones and their actions. For example, we are actually supposed to discuss about the adrenaline, insulin, testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. These three hormones are actually the gender related hormone, or you may say these are sex related hormones, in which which means that these hormones only have the significance in the definition of the gender, and they also do have some other very important significances, but we will be discuss all of these along with the understand the sources, role and effects of the ADH, FSH and LH. We would be discussing all these hormones collectively. All these hormones should be discussed collectively because all of these have a direct relation to each other. So we will be discussing these hormones. But let me first discuss two hormones here, adrenaline and insulin. Before that, let's have a recap about the feedback mechanism. I told you that performing opposite to stimulus is a kind of negative feedback in which is actually controlled by the which is actually carried out by the body, that when the body needs something, it increases the amount of that particular compound. Or you may say that if the stimulus is that something is less, the body would respond opposite. And if the stimulus is that something is extra, the body would perform opposite to that stimulus, and that is called as negative feedback. So this is about, and we discussed it according to the example of thyroxine hormone, and we said that when we need the energy, the stimulus is energy is less, and the response is energy is increased in the body, so it is an opposite response. Similarly, when the energy is enough, the response of the body is to shut down the release of thyroxine so that it does not produces a large amount of energy. So coming back to the point, um, we are going to discuss about the role of insulin in our body. Before that, let me tell you a bit about the pancreas. Pancreas is a hormone we discussed about. No, we haven't discussed about this yet. But pancreas is a pancreas is an organ. Pancreas is an organ that is situated just below the stomach. It is situated just below the stomach, and this hormone has a very particular significance in two types of functions. One is exocrine and the other one is endocrine. The exocrine function and the endocrine function, this is the pancreas. I'm going to discuss both of these functions right now. Let's have a magnified diagram of the pancreas. Pancreas is actually a leaf-like organ which is containing two regions in it. This gland or this organ is containing two of the very important regions which actually control the whole body according to the need. For example, if you look upon the pancreas, there is a projecting duct out of the pancreas which is known as pancreatic duct. Pancreatic duct. And along with these pancreatic duct, there are some sac-like sac-like structures that are present just that are present just beside the pancreatic duct. Pancreatic duct is entering from here and it proceeds till here. It proceeds till here. So these are actually those type of you may say sacs which are producing the pancreatic juice. You know about the pancreatic juice that it contains the enzymes. So these are the different sacs. Let me tell you about these cells. The name of these cells are called as acne cells. These are acne cells, and these cells produce the pancreatic juice, and the pancreatic juice would be delivered outside the pancreas. This is an exocrine function. Why this is an exocrine function? Can you tell me?
Um,
It is not following the path of blood. It is following the path of the duct. We did discuss about this, that
yes.
if any chemical is not following the path of the blood, it would not be categorized under the system of the endocrine. Now, there are some other cells in this pancreas. These cells are located just like small islands in an ocean, a group of islands in a huge ocean, and these small groups of cells are also named accordingly. These are known as islets of Langerhans. Langerhans was the name of the scientist. These are islets. Islets means small islands which are present in the groups inside an ocean. But the important point is these islets possess two types of cells. One is called as beta cells and the other one is called as alpha cells. These beta cells produce an insulin, and these alpha cells produce an antagonistic hormone known as glucagon. What is the function of insulin and what is the function of the glucagon? Let me tell you about this. If you know, then you should tell me.
Insulin is used for regulating the blood glucose levels.
Insulin, let's be more specified. Actually, insulin reduces the amount of glucose in blood, reducing the blood glucose. How? It converts the glucose into two types of substances. Number one, it can convert the glucose into glycogen, which is a carbohydrate stored in our body, and it can also convert the glucose into fats. So it means it would certainly reduce the amount of glucose in blood, not in the body, in the blood, by converting the extra glucose in the blood into glycogen, either in glycogen or into the fats. And if we are talking about the glucagon, it is an antagonistic one. And I, I suppose that you know that what is meant by antagonizing. Antagonizing means to do the opposite of the insulin with the same process. Sorry, to do the opposite of something in the same process. For example, if we are talking on a topic and I am a person who is having a counter argument with you, I am going to say that I am antagonize you. I am antagonizing you. I antagonize you, right? So this is what is the meaning of antagonize, that the glucagon would the blood glucose increase the blood glucose. How? It would convert the glycogen back to glucose. Convert the glycogen back to glucose, and it would certainly be a of help, because when we do not have the glucose in our blood, then it should be released and it should be converting the glycogen into glucose so that we may not suffer lack of energy. So this is a very important hormone. So insulin is actually this type of hormone that reduces the blood glucose. It does not. Uh, Now you can say that both of these hormones are antagonizing each other. But what is the most important point? These both are following the negative feedback. Both are following the negative feedback. These both are actually work antagonizing with each other, antagonizing each other according to negative feedback. For example, uh, if there is some sort of a lack of energy, the glucagon would release and it would convert the glycogen into glucose. But if you have an extra amount of glucose, you would certainly start reducing it. Extra amount, you have extra amount and you are going to reduce it. So if you are reducing the amount of glucose, it would be a negative feedback. You would use insulin to reduce the amount. If there is too much reduction in the amount of glucose, you would release the glucagon to increase the amount. So these both are working. Both certainly antagonize each other according to negative feedback. Let me tell you another thing about this negative feedback. Do you know about the process of homeostasis?
Yes, homeostasis is basically regulating the internal body conditions.
Regulating the internal body conditions, or you may say maintaining the internal body conditions in spite of external body conditions, external conditions that are that the body is facing. For example, if your body has a set point, this is a set point of something, your body would try to achieve this set point at all costs. For example, if you have an amount of glucose in your body that is increasing the set point, you would start reducing it. And if the reduced point, if the point, if you have reduced the amount of glucose to such extent that you are going below the required amount, you increase the glucose and then you decrease the glucose and then you increase the glucose. This is actually regulating the body, regulating regulation of body body phenomena or body mechanisms to achieve the set point, achieve the set point. Why have I suddenly turned to homeostasis? I will tell you this a bit later. But suppose we have a set point in our blood about the glucose. We have 100 mg per 100 ml of blood. We should not exceed the amount of glucose in blood more than 100 mg. It should be, it is a set point. But if you exceed to this amount, then the limit of exceeding is 120 mg per 100 ml. You must not exceed this amount. Otherwise, you would be regarded as the diabetic. And certainly, if you start reducing the glucose in the blood and it exceeds the lowest point or it reaches the lowest point, you must return it back to the back to the set point so that it may not reduce much. So what point I want to make here is uh, our body always work in the fashion of the negative feedback. Are you getting my point? Negative feedback is actually the theme of regulation, that you have a certain set point of everything and you control your body according to negative feedback so that your body does not have a high amount of something or low amount of something. Instead, you should have a set point so that your body should follow this set point accordingly. Now, what my point is, if we are having the insulin in our body, it should have a very careful amount in the blood because the amount of sugar must not reduce to 80 mg per 100 ml of blood. But the problem is, if we lack insulin, if we lack insulin, there is a problem. And what is that? We exceed the amount exceed the 120 mg per 100 ml. We exceed the point of 120 mg and we start moving forward towards 150, 200, 250, etc. Okay, let me tell you, have you heard about the glucose and the random glucose test and the other one, the fasting glucose test?
Yes, I've heard about it.
The amount that I am telling you right now, 80 to 120, is for fasting. It's not for random. For random, it should not exceed 200. For example, if you just had a meal and you are going to and you should not check your glucose before 2 hours after a meal, and after 2 hours you check your glucose and it is approximately it is around 160, and you start panicking that I'm having the diabetes. No, you are not having the diabetes. The normal random amount of glucose is 200. Random. If you are checking in fasting, it should not exceed 100. It is recommended that it should not exceed 100. Otherwise, the doctor would identify you, diagnose you as a pre-diabetic. What is diabetes? I will tell you a bit more about the diabetes, but let me tell you about once what is the diabetes. Diabetes is the exceeded amount of glucose in blood. Now, I can guess what you are thinking. You are thinking that the amount of glucose in the blood would increase due to absence of insulin, because the insulin has the duty to reduce the amount of the blood glucose. So if the insulin is not there, then certainly the glucose would be exceeding the set point. But the problem is it is not always insulin. It is not always insulin. There is a specific type. There are two types of diabetes, and I think you must know about it. Number one is type 1 diabetes, and the other one is type 2. The type 1 is are those diabetic persons which are suffering from insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. They are suffering from insulin dependent. What is the meaning of insulin dependent? They have no insulin in their body. They are, in the current circumstances, in the current medical progress, these persons are at these persons which have who are suffering from IDDM, insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. They are very easy. Why? Because the medical science has made the progress so much that they can take the insulin from external sources and they can eat everything. They can eat everything, just they have to take the insulin after a meal or before a meal, so they can have everything. But there are some other persons which are non which are suffering from non insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. These are type 2. And this is dangerous because in this type of diabetes, insulin is there. Insulin is there in the blood, but the cells are not accepting the glucose. Cells are not accepting the glucose. Cells are rejecting the glucose. So the amount of glucose would build up in the blood because the cells are no more receiving the glucose. The cells are no more taking the glucose inside, so it would build up in the blood. So this type of diabetes is right now the most prevailing type of diabetes. And it can be controlled by changing the lifestyle, by changing the types of food we are having. Yes,
For type 2 diabetes, I had a question. What sort of
yes.
human activities lead to this type of like diabetes?
Yeah, I was going towards the exact point, so let's have a discussion about it. For example, the reasons in the reasons, the biggest reason is our lifestyle, our nutrition. What kind of nutrition we are having? If we are having a meal, if we are having a continuously a meal with a large amount of carbohydrates, it can lead to it can lead to type 2, but only and only when you have a sedentary lifestyle. The important and the most important thing is the lifestyle. You may eat, you are raising your hand again.
No, sorry, I forgot to unraise
Okay.
it.
You may eat anything. You may eat anything until and unless you consume it. If you do not consume the amount you have taken in your meal, either you have taken the fat or you have taken the carbohydrates, whatever type of food you just have taken, if you are not properly consuming that food, it would lead you to type 2. And what happens? What is the reason of type 2? Actually, what happens? I told you that glucose, or let me be more specific, the carbohydrates, these can be converted into fats. First of all, body tries to convert it into glycogen, but the storage compartments of glycogen are less. We have more tendency to store fats than the glycogen. Do you know about the glycogen? Let's have a discussion about it, then we will be coming back to that point.
Glycogen is a substance that can be stored to be converted into glucose for later use.
Later use. Actually, it is an energy reservoir, but we only have reserve amount of glycogen for one day. So the body, first of all, tries to convert every sort of energy into glycogen, but we have limited tendency to store it, so we store it in in the form of fats. Now what happens? uh, these fats cause the rejection of glucose by the cells. Actually, this is actually the reason. When we have too much fats in our body, then our in our body or in our cells, then our cells start to reject the coming glucose inside the cell. There is some more thing than meets the eye. For example, I told you some days ago that every cell has a very particular receptor for glucose. The glucose cannot enter into the cell from some random side. No, never. The glucose would only be able to enter the cell through this receptor. So the fats would alter the receptor. Fat would alter the structure of the receptor. Have you ever heard, God forbid, if someone is experiencing for example, if someone is in an accident and his car has a damaged door, then the door won't open. Have you ever heard about it?
Yes.
Similar thing happens to the receptor. When the fats are deposited inside the cells, they would alter the structure of the receptor, and the receptor now would not accept any sort of glucose, and glucose would not pass into the cell. This is not the only reason, because sometimes, let me tell you about this. Sometimes the receptor is genetically, uh, you may say, genetically altered, or you may use another word, uh, is damaged, or is formed in the wrong conformation due to genetics. So there are many types. You can see that all of the types which I am right now mentioning are all of these types do not have anything to do with the insulin. No matter what type, what amount of insulin is right now in the blood, the problem is that the receptor is not the proper there. The door is shut, or the door is now damaged. The glucose cannot pass that door, the receptor, so the fats won't enter into the glucose won't enter into the cell, So the first thing first, if someone is not suffering with type 2 diabetes genetically, then the major reason is sedentary lifestyle. We are having a huge amount of meal and then we stay in bed. We do not adapt a healthier lifestyle. We do not try to adapt a lifestyle that is beneficial for us, that would consume the fats in our body. We are not ready. So this is the major reason, and this can be easily overcome by changing the lifestyle. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Type 1 diabetes, also type 2 diabetes is mentioned here. It can continue to make an overweight and eat a poor diet that is high in sugar and other carbohydrates. Controlling it by eating a good diet and doing regular exercise tends to happen in middle age or older age people. Type 1 happen at any age. Okay. Constant thirst. This is another problem. If you are suffering from diabetes, you are under a constant condition of um parching with the thirst. You can say parching with the thirst, that you are not, you every time you feel that you are not having enough water, you keep drinking water and you keep urinating. The reason, the problem is your blood is, due to extra sugar, extra glucose, your blood is hypertonic. Do you know what is hypertonic? Do you remember?
Yes.
So
It
your
acts
blood is
as
yes, 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 please.
hypertonic is basically when a substance or a fluid is concentrated.
Yes, 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 yes. Very correct. Very correct. When a substance in a fluid is concentrated, it is hypertonic. So, uh, your blood or your brain would constantly tell you that your blood is concentrated right now. So, go and drink the water. Go and drink the water. You constantly feel thirsty. Now, what happens when you constantly feel thirsty? There is another reason of this problem. Let me tell you about this. Do you have any idea of nephron?
Yes. Those absorb the substances inside the kidneys.
Yes, certainly. Ignore my bad drawing. So, what happens actually? The glucose is filtered through the nephron and it should not exceed. Now, be very specific about this. Be very, very attentive about this. What I'm going to tell you, the amount of glucose that is entering inside the sugar should not exceed 300 milligram per 100 ml. This is a huge amount, huge, but it should not exceed. Why? Because nephron cannot absorb the glucose more than 300. For example, if you have 350 milligram per 100 ml, then much of the glucose would cross the proximal convoluted tubule, and this sugar would start entering into your urine. Now, the problem, the problem is if you have more sugar, if you have more glucose in your nephron, you would be urinating more water. Why? To dilute the urine. To dilute the urine, you would be needing more water. So, whenever there is extra glucose in your urine would take extra water from the body to make it possible to pass through the urinary system. And when we do not pass it through the urinary system, we are not able to pass through the urinary system, it would create the stones. To avoid these type of complicated processes, the nephron would take as much water as it can to make the passage of the sugar through the urinary system easier. So it would take the water from your blood. Whenever your blood is giving the water to the nephron, it would be it would have the reduced amount of water now. And now it would tell the brain that now I do not have the enough amount of water. The brain would again tell you to go drink the water. So these are two reasons. One, when your blood is hypertonic, and two, when you have exceeded to a very high amount of glucose in your blood, it would start demanding more and more water, so that you go to the go to drink water. Then you after some time you go urinate, and then you drink water, then you urinate. This is the problem. So if a person is suffering from the diabetes, he or she should first of all change the lifestyle. Change the lifestyle if he or she is not suffering with the genetic type 2, because the type 1 is mostly genetic. Type 1 is mostly genetic, but type 2 occurs later in life. Oh, okay. There is another reason I forgot to tell you. A very important reason is aging. With the proceeding age, the processes tend to proceed at a slower rate. So it is an obvious consequence of this aging that we may have extra amount of glucose in blood, because the processes of our body are declining. The processes of our body are declining, so it is an obvious consequence that there is a chance that the amount of glucose is more than usual in our blood. So that is why we should be very conscious about our diet, especially after 35. so that we may not get the problem of diabetes or extra sugar, extra glucose in our body. Okay, let's have a small talk about the adrenaline. Adrenaline. Adrenaline is actually a product of a gland. Okay, I didn't tell you about the gland. Gland is any organ that secretes a chemical messenger. Chemical messenger. Either it is exocrine, that is also a messenger, or it is uh, an endocrine. It is any organ. So the gland adrenaline is secreted by a gland known as adrenal gland. And from where did it get the name of adrenal? Ad means above, and renal means kidney. So a gland that is situated just above the kidney, and it is of the due to fats, it is of this color, and it has two main regions. There is a clear color difference between these two. And this whole organ is known as adrenal. The structural difference is the outer portion is known as cortex and the inner portion is known as medulla. The cortex is dedicated to secrete certain family of hormone, and the name of that family is steroid. This is not yet our concern, but there is the second region, also known as medulla. It releases a family of chemicals that are named as, the general name of the family is catecholamines. Two types of chemicals are released from the medulla. Sorry, a single type of family, but there are two subtypes of catecholamines. One is adrenaline, and the other one is noradrenaline. So these are grouped under this single word catecholamines. So the cortex is dedicated for the steroids. The adrenaline is actually a hormone that is also known as a hormone for fight or flight because it prepares our body for some certain tough conditions. Now, let me tell you that this is not the only hormone. The noradrenaline also works for the same purpose, but mostly we mention the adrenaline. These both hormones, actually there is a very beautiful word I read in a book, that adrenaline and noradrenaline both work synergistically synergistically with each other. What is synergistic working? Synchronized working. Actually, there are two terms. One is antagonistic, when one hormone antagonizes the other. This is antagonistic working. and the other one is synergistic when one hormone supports the other for the same process. These both work synergistically. So adrenaline, what kind of tough conditions? The question is what changes occur in our body? What changes occur in our body body due to action of adrenaline? Okay, number one, the blood. Uh, Let me be more specific. The volume of blood is in, is increased towards the extremities. What are extremities? What are the extremities of the body?
I haven't heard the word extremities before. I'm
Okay,
unsure.
okay, okay, okay. Extremities are actually the muscles. Or you may be more specific, arms, legs, feet, head, nose, etc., etc. The blood is directed, the volume of the blood is increased towards the extremities. So feel, you can have more energy in your extremities because during this time you do not need more blood in your kidney, you do not need more blood in your stomach, you do not need more blood in your liver, you do not need more blood in your bladder, you do not need blood going towards the testicles, ovaries. You do not need more blood going to any other gland. You are suffering with fight and flight response. So it should not be, the volume of the blood should be focused towards the extremities. And also, second one, heartbeat elevates. Obviously, your breathing goes deep. What is deep breathing? When you breathe once, but you take more volume of air in you, more volume. Then there is another very important thing. The pupils dilate. What is the benefit of this?
When the pupils dilate, more light enters the eye, so the person is more aware
So
of their
you,
surroundings.
yes, very good. Well done, well done, well done. The pupils dilate and you are more aware. Your vision becomes broader and you are more aware of the surroundings. So you may receive the every type of every small movement going around you. So this is another thing, pupils dilate. And then your goosebumps because your muscles contract like this, and then what happens, what some other things, for example, digestion stops. These all, and there is very, very important thing, mucus reduces. If you are constantly suffering with the stress, the mucus in your digestive system reduces. And you can guess what would happen in the stomach if the mucus reduces. Mucus is actually alkaline. You know very well when the acid and alkaline are in a reaction, what happens? Alkali. Salt, neutralization. If there is no alkali, what happens? Only acid is there. Now, if the mucus is reduced, there is no alkali, the acid would destroy the internal lining of the stomach. Acid would certainly destroy the internal lining of the stomach. So if someone is in a constant stress since many years, there is a chance that he or she is suffering with digestive problems due to this same issue, same problem. Okay, so let's see some pictures of the effects of adrenaline. Your adrenaline releases in this condition, and you can see the cat in this response. And you can see here the breathing rate increases and breaths become deeper, taking more oxygen. The heartbeat becomes faster, sending more blood to the muscles. Blood is diverted away from the intestine into the muscles. In the liver, stored carbohydrate is changed into glucose. Another thing, important thing. The pupils dilate, body hair stand up straight, which is goosebumps. Mental awareness is increased. Another point which I didn't mention, that your mental awareness increases, your fight and flight and fear and rage centers start responding very quickly, and the reflex centers are as well. So these all the effects. These all are the effects of the adrenaline. Understood?
Yes, sir.